Now that the chassis is pretty much squared away, I think it's time we take a look at the speakers. Now I have two sets. These on the bottom here are the original speakers that came with it. The ones that are actually mounted is a set that I bought off of eBay, made by Wheeler. I've never measured the field or voice coils or transformers on either set, so I don't actually know if any of these speakers are good, but I've had pretty good luck in the past with speakers, so I hope that holds up in this case. The reason I got these is when I first got these speakers, I'd never attempted to recone them or anything like that, and when I saw them I figured they must be shot, I better start looking for a replacement set, and these popped up on eBay. I think I paid all of about 20 bucks for them. However, I don't actually know that they're compatible. They're exactly the same dimensions, and they seem to have the same type mounting hardware, the same box here, and wired up the same way, but I don't actually know if the resistances match. Now, the field coil resistance is not specified on the schematic, so I'm just going to grab an ohm meter and first check the originals, and then check these two and see how they compare. However, I think I am going to try to use these original speakers first, assuming that they ohm out okay. They're a bit rusty and the cones are damaged, as I'll show you in a moment, but I think I can repair the cones certainly well enough that they should play. Here's the cone side of the speakers, and as you can see, we've got some damage to both of them. So I'll make some patches with coffee filters, and I'll get out my Eileen's tacky fabric glue like I showed in some other videos on speaker repair, and see what I can do with these. This one moves, although it seems like it might be scraping a little. Hard to say with the cone being damaged, but seems like it's got some life left. This one doesn't seem to move at all, but that might be normal, I'm not sure. I presume this is for higher frequencies, although there's no crossover network or anything, these are just wired in parallel. But just for the physical construction of it with the smaller cone and that, and maybe there's a stiffer voice coil in there. It should move at least a little bit though. But I'll take a closer look, see what's up. I hooked up my ohm meter to various points, and I wrote down the values I obtained on the schematic. Both field coils were just about 3.3K, and on the primary of the audio output transformer I got 301 and 345 on either side of the center tap, and on the secondary I got 6.5 ohms. Now that'll be with both voice coils and the output connected in parallel. I'd really need to unsolder some wires to test these individually. Now what I want to do is try to take the same readings out of this set of speakers and see how they compare. I also took a closer look on this speaker, and it looks like there's some rust and crud down in there around the voice coil, which I think is what's causing it to be so stiff, so this might not play so well. The only way to clean that out, unfortunately, would be to remove this cone. Now, I was about to say I'm not one much for reconing. Actually, I've never attempted to recone a speaker. I understand the process, though, and if I had a proper paper cone, I would give it a shot. I suppose I can ask around or look around online and find the right size paper cone somewhere. Basically the process is you rip out the old cone, you retain the voice coil and spider down in here, and you glue in the new cone, being careful to keep the voice coil centered. I've seen guys like stick toothpicks around the gap, and you want to glue around the outside and keep consistent pressure on it. Before I try firing this setup with those Wheeler speakers, there are a few things I have to take care of. One, I am going to temporarily wire in the 6.8 microfarad caps. Once I get the set working, I'll get around to restuffing these nice copper caps. So I've traced out the wiring, and the two positive terminals go here, and here are the two holes where the caps will get mounted. And then this is the common negative, which goes over to this point. The chassis is not the common negative for these caps. They use this to develop a negative bias, so this is actually the common point for the caps. So I'll put these on the other side, thread the wires through, and hook them up accordingly. Two, I need to wire back in a line cord, and I think I'll throw in an inline fuse while I'm at it. Gotta hook the shadow meter back up. I'm really worried I'm going to forget to do that. Remember, I disconnected it while I was testing it to make sure it was still good. Gotta hook those wires back up. I've got to repopulate the tubes. And finally, I need to double, triple, quadruple check my speaker wire hookup. There are 5 wires here that have to go to those Wheeler speakers. These are a little bit different than other sets I've worked on in that they do not use the field coils for a filter choke. It's a dedicated filter choke on this power supply over here. The field coils are actually powered right off the power supply and then to ground. So if you follow the main power supply output here, it goes around. And it's not very distinct, that's actually a dot. So that is a connection. It goes over here, here, and that's one field coil. Goes through that, over to the other one, down through that into ground. Now the center tap here between the two field coils goes back into the set and down and around, and they must be using that for some sort of voltage supply for the rest of the set that needs to be at half of the main supply voltage. So that's 3 of the connections there. The main B plus supply, the center tap return, and ground. The other 2 are for the output transformer. Center tap on the output transformer goes back around and goes to the high side on the field coils to that main B plus supply. So they have them labeled on here as green, white, blue and white, green and white, and blue. Now, colors have faded over time. I can see some semblance of traces left on these and guesstimate that this one, this dingy looking light colored one, is probably white. And this other solid one is probably the green. And this is probably blue, blue and white, and green and white. But I will get out an ohmmeter and double check all those before I hook them up to the speakers. I buttoned up all the wiring and populated the tube sockets. Also have the speaker wired in. So the original speakers were just wired directly into this cable. The ends of these wires were soldered directly into this area. Whereas this set of Wheeler speakers has this cable and this 5-prong connector. So instead of cutting this off or running the wires right down into here, I took the original cable from the 15DX and tacked it onto the end of each of the corresponding prongs on this connector. And I've got my voltmeter attached to what should be the highest potential point. It's between ground and the center tap, which goes over there right here. It should be approximately somewhere around 300 volts, I would guess. It's 320 right off the rectifier and 255 by the time it goes to the filter choke and so on. It gets to the Type 42 tubes. So plates on the 42 go through this transformer and then over to at that point, so I imagine there'll be a little bit of a loss on that transformer, but we should be in the ballpark of 300 volts. Alright, so let's give this a try. I've got my Variac turned down to around 115 volts, I believe. So let's turn that on. Turn this on. Pile light came on, it's a good sign. And we're at 332 volts. So your rectifiers come up pretty quick, I've noticed. Our tubes are heating up, you can see the filaments glowing, voltage is dropping down. Got noise. Looks like one tube isn't lit up though, one of the type 37, or sorry, rather the type 39. No, sorry, well, it's a type 37. This guy, it's not glowing. Or at least if it is, it's so feeble I can't see it. To dig around, I'm not sure if I have any spares. It's not a real common tube. Anyways, let's see if it works regardless. So the volume control is responding. Got a lot more noise as I turn the volume up. Certainly getting one station in. I actually wonder if that tube is either really out or is it just so dim I can't see it. Let's see, which tube is that? That's what I thought. That's the oscillator for the super hot. And if that tube is out, then there'd be no local oscillator. I don't know how you could be able to tune the station.
AM 1160. A brand new year. The good thing, we can start off on the right foot with a renewed conviction to grow in our relationship with God.
Forgot about that. The bulb was loose in the socket and wasn't lit up.
Learning how you can grow.
Shadow meter moves a little bit, but not a whole lot. I don't know what that is, but the meter just moved in. I got on that. Guessing this is the high end of the band, because I'm not getting any stations I recognize, so let's go down. That's a pretty strong station. Meter closed a bit more on that. I don't know how much that should close, but I guess it's a lot more than that. So I'm thinking maybe the bias is off a bit on it.
Let's get your toe caught in an escalator.
I cracked my head on a counter at a store Christmas.
Here's a closer look at that display.
Five of the last 6 years saw Chicago miss the postseason, and the offensive woes that have contributed to that skid. With the Bears, you look at it with this situation of Lovie Smith. You're exactly right. You couldn't.
So I think the next thing I'll do is go through and check all the tubes thoroughly with one of my better tube testers, like the Hickok 600. Because most of these are the original globes that came with this radio, and a few other globes I've picked up over the years. I'm not sure how good they really are. 42 output tubes should be good though, because those are more modern ST types I've got in there right now, and the 80 rectifier is good, but I'm not sure about any of the others. So I've got a pretty long antenna hooked up right now, and this isn't the greatest reception. I notice that shadow meter has gone completely out now too. So I might have some bias voltages that are off. I do have a voltage chart that came with service info, so I can check the voltages of the tube sockets as well.
And we heard some of that on Monday.
But hey, the first power up, I mean, geez, what am I complaining about? This stuff's actually working and playing for the first time. in who knows how many years. So now it'll just be a matter of fine-tuning it. Plus, I'm sure it could benefit from an alignment.
I have no fear of saying, Mary.
Let's see if I turn this back off for a minute or so and then turn it back on. I want to see if that shadow meter starts working again. Yeah, it is back on. And then as the set warms up.
We can refer to those as some of the good old days, which I think we're going to be. The press searched and searched and searched and crawled under every rock they could.
Yeah, and as the set warms up, it starts to not work so well anymore.
Decided the Tea Party. Event the 2000 Rose Bowl game, Wisconsin won that.
Alright, cool. So, because I was saying, I got to check all the tubes, check the voltages and so on, and then something else I'm going to need to do is work on this entire tuning mechanism, because the rubber mounts for this are all rotted out. So it would involve removing a bunch of wires, pull the whole thing off. While I got it off, I can clean it as well, and then put some new rubber mounts in there and hook everything back up. And plenty of cleaning to do on the chassis as well. IF cans are nice and dirty. So I was a little surprised to hear how I would play without the shield installed too. I thought there might be some feedback, but no, there wasn't really. So I know on some TRF sets I've worked on some pre-super het sets. If you take the shields off, you get some really bad howling from feedback between the stages. I finished testing all the tubes and they're just fine, so I put them all back in. I powered the radio back up and I've been fiddling around with it for a while. And then I remembered that the power switch has 3 positions. One is off, and the other 2 I was speculating was for local and distant. I've only had it in the 2nd position, and I was a little disappointed with the gain. Well, check this out.
Maybe I should go.
No, Kristen, please stay.
I must have had it in the local position, which cuts down gain. So,
He is old.
Okay,
much louder now. Shadow meter's still funky though. I notice it kind of flutters though now when I go by stations when I'm in the distance, what I presume is the distance position. Now, it's not much going to it. Here's the meter. One side goes right to this coil and this main bus going through here, and the other goes to this 1K resistor. So that's the first thing I'm going to check. It's the most obvious thing. It's right in series with the meter. Otherwise, I'll just continue checking. As I said before, I do have a little voltage chart here, which I haven't gone through yet. For each of the tubes, it tells you what the basic voltages should be between plate to cathode, screw grid to cathode, and control grid to cathode, and cathode to filaments. But let's see what we can get this thing to do in the distance mode.
You know, the show's a half an hour long, and it's on Thursday nights on FX, totally biased. It's
Oh,
really
here's
a funny
the
show.
tone
So tell me
control.
about how that process is.
We start Monday through Wednesday are intense days because we shoot Thursday.
Basically, as you turn it to the positions to the right,
all the time,
it cuts down the high frequencies.
Pitch meeting, just like us having a conversation. Oh, that's funny. So it's always, ideas always.
Clot problems once that clot is dissolved.
Generally, the treatment is blood thinners. She has not suffered a stroke or any
There's a little bit of
neurological
hum.
injury, and her prognosis is quite good. It is a serious condition.
But I think it might be the same problem I've seen with other radios I've worked on. Check out this line filter here. It's referenced to ground, which is the chassis. On other radios I've had where there's a single line filter cap that goes right across the line, it will cut out the noise without me having to ground the chassis. But in this case, the chassis I don't have hooked up to ground, so there's really nothing for these filter caps to reference. So I hooked up an alligator clip here, just stuck it into the ground terminal, my power strip. If I hook this up, there's a pretty distinct effect. But I notice it also kills the gain quite a bit. So, not quite sure what's going on there.
Starting with the new year, it'll rise in at least 10 states and 3 cities, but more pay isn't necessarily that.
Almost makes me think that the antenna input might be connected to ground somewhere. It shouldn't be though, it should be like this. Otherwise, I'm not quite sure. Well, I'm not surprised that it cuts the gain a little bit, because we can see the antenna has a 10K resistor going to ground. So if I ground the chassis, it might cut the signal level down on the input, but it shouldn't cut it down that so much so that you get swamped by noise, I wouldn't think.
Warren Buffett led the way, donating $3 billion. When you look at that, the system is broken. When a man like this can.
Finally hear some music to listen to. And keep in mind these speakers are pointing face down on my workbench, so not exactly going to be the greatest fidelity. Obviously these replacement Wheeler speakers work just fine with this radio. And that's a very good thing.
The Lord afar off. He went back.
He goes through fluctuations, 30-year cycles, longer-year cycles.
I'm just not picking up as many stations as I was expecting. So even though with this local distance switch in this position I'm getting a lot more gain, I'm still not getting much selectivity. I think I'm using those terms correctly. I mean, sure, I'm getting the dozen or so local stations that always come through nice and strong, but not much else besides that. There's large areas of dead space all through here. Now, the alignment might be horribly off, which would certainly go a long way towards explaining this. So I think instead of just speculating endlessly, I'll continue on with the troubleshooting.